Welcome to the iGamingCare podcast. Safer gambling, smarter choices. Weekly expert-led podcasts from iGamingCare.
Michelle, welcome to our podcast. How are you today?
Hi, Andreas. Thank you for having me. I'm very good. Although the weather, as you can see in my background, is really bad in Germany at the moment, but nevertheless, I'm well.
So this is our first podcast. Yeah. You are an acknowledged lawyer in all this gambling, sports betting stuff, and maybe you can say a few sentences about you before we dig into our Bill 55 topic.
Yeah, sure. So as you've said, I'm a lawyer, mainly focusing on gambling law in Germany, and gambling also includes sports betting. We at Melchers, which is the law firm where I'm working at, based in Heidelberg in the southern Germany area, we are focused on mainly at the moment the online gambling industry and advising operators that are stakeholders in this industry. Exactly. And I've been doing this for about 3 years now, and I absolutely love it.
Good to hear. So today, for everyone who is not so much in the legal things, I would like to outline a case. And, so I've heard that in Germany, we have people who played in online casinos, lost, and then found out, oh, that casino has been illegal when I played. Then they go to court, say, yeah, I did not know it was illegal, so can I claim my money back? And I've read about many cases where they won. So my understanding is you then have victory at court, you have a title, and you might jump for joy and say, yeah, now I go to the operator who has offered it, and I want my money back. And many of the operators reside in Malta. And Malta, I heard and read, has a Bill 55 that basically says, excuse my layman's word, we don't care about German law. You cannot enforce it. You will not get your money back. And I'm not a lawyer, but for me, this sounds weird. It's a matter of how does it make sense to go to court at all when you know you don't get it? Will there be additional rulings? So first of all, is that reality what I have described? Does that happen?
Yeah, so two major facts here. Your intuition is completely right. It is to put it that way, more or less weird that a member state of the European Union can refuse the acknowledgement of judgments, as we would call it in the legal language, titles that would allow a claimant to enforce the judgment or, for example, a settlement. Yes. However, all EU regulations and principles have the possibility for exceptions. And this is exactly what Malta has done here. They have made use of this exception where they could either stem their the Bill 55 on public policy amongst Maltese law, or even the law itself, where it says the principle of acknowledgement or general acknowledgement of foreign judgments that is not in compliance with our national laws, where we would then say, okay, in certain scenarios, we don't accept or acknowledge these judgments. But coming back to the individual player, yes, obviously it does put a hurdle in their way to enforce their judgments in case a civil court in Germany, a national civil court, has actually approved their claim. But that does not only regard Germany, it could also regard a claim that has been initiated before an Austrian civil court, for example. It's not only mainly focused on Germany, it just is a general new rule, Bill 55, as you said, which is more or less a new provision in the Maltese Gaming Act.
Wow. So what does that mean for the player who has this title? Is it then lost forever? So when he finds out, oh, my opponent is on this island in the Mediterranean, is that then time to give up? Or do you wait until there are new rulings for the European laws? What will happen?
So Bill 55 is not set in stone, although Malta has instated and initiated this clause into the Maltese Gaming Act, yes, but it's the European Commission that is now currently investigating and looking at Bill 55 and whether it is in compliance with European law. So, from the viewpoint of the player, no, not all is lost. If you have a judgment that has become binding, this just does not go away or poof off up into thin air or anything. But at the moment, they would probably not be able to enforce on Malta if certain prerequisites or requirements apply, because obviously Bill 55 doesn't just say all judgments from other countries that stem from player claims can't be enforced. The operator that has been defending themselves before the German National Court would also have to fulfill certain requirements. And if that is not the case, then yes, a player can still enforce their judgments on Malta despite Bill 55 being instated. And then looking ahead into the future, obviously, it could be the case that the European Commission finds Bill 55 to not be in compliance with this general clause I initially explained. Yes, it could be that judgments can possibly in the future be enforceable on Malta, despite any certain requirements that the operator might have fulfilled or not.
Okay, so if somebody is listening to our podcast and says, well, last week I played in an online casino and I lost, can I now call Michelle to go to court for me and claim my money back? Are there special requirements that you have a chance to claim your money back?
There are many layers to this answer. Firstly, at Melchers, we advise operators, so I would probably be in conflict with my interests.
So that means you are on the dark side of the force in this case.
I'm on the interesting side of the force, I would say.
Okay.
So that would be a hurdle, but obviously there are many player claim lawyers now that have appeared on the scene, and also litigation funders. So a player could still obviously try to initiate a claim before a civil court, and they usually also do that. But a claim has to fit into the mold of German civil law, meaning it has to fulfill, obviously, the requirements of these claims. You can't just say, just because you gambled online and lost some money, you can just go before a court and get your money back. You would, and this is usually the turning point, and I think something you and my colleague Holger also discussed in your previous episode, that it stands and falls with the question of whether the player had knowledge of the illegality of the gambling offer at the time that he participated in it. And it is quite difficult for the defendant, meaning the operator, to highlight this before a court, so meaning to prove the knowledge of the player, because they can just simply exculpate themselves by saying, well, I had no idea that this was illegal. But you do have to say that now that the topic, also because of the indicative order of the Federal Court of Justice in Germany, and because the public press has taken up on this issue more and more since this player claim wave has come up, players would usually know of the illegality. Also because we now have a licensing proceeding that is being looked over by the GGL, our national regulator. So you can distinguish between the whitelisted market and the blacklisted, or the black market. You would always see on TV after 9 p.m., for example, these TV spots for gambling offers where they always highlight the existence of the whitelist. A halfway informed player would also know that there is a black market, obviously.
Yes, of course. So that means if our player plays on a whitelisted, licensed, legal casino, he cannot claim it back anyhow, because it was a binding legal contract.
Exactly.
If he plays on a casino that does not have a German license, but a foreign license, my understanding is that in Germany it's illegal, even though they have a Maltese license, for example. And if the player could say, I had no clue that this thing did not have a German license, and somebody would believe him, he would have a slight chance of getting his money back.
Yes, more or less this is correct. However, obviously it is up to dispute of whether a European license from, for example, Malta would still be sufficient. But yes, this is overall the broad scenario at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when I read the statistics, I think it's hundreds and thousands of players that try to claim their money back, But in most cases, it seems to be older cases, which was years ago, because I totally agree with you. When we have a license, you even have this stamp, this certificate on the online games. So I think it must be super difficult to say I had no idea that this thing did not have a license.
Yeah, it is correct. Most of the player claims come from a time period where, especially online casino games, so meaning virtual slot machine games, online poker, and bank holder games, were not permissible even in Germany and therefore not licensed by a German national authority. It is a bit different in regard to sports betting. That's a legally very difficult question to answer. However, in regard to online casino, yes, and they usually stem from a time period between 2012 and 2018 up to 2020.
Mm-hmm. So maybe it's a theoretical question, but if there's a court ruling that for such an older case you are entitled to get your money back, what does that mean from the other perspective? Could an operator say, when that guy can claim the money back, if he has won, can I net that off? Is there a calculation, or is it just about the money that you lost? Or do you also put your winnings at stake when you go to court?
Yeah, no, usually it only regards the losses. Exactly.
Okay. So you literally you have nothing to lose, at least when you go to court.
As a player, you mean?
Yes.
Well, you do bear the risk of the whole proceeding as a claimant, as a person who brings forward a civil claim or just a claim in general. You, as the person who is initiating it, are carrying the burden of potentially losing. And I do want to stress the fact that it is not as simple as outlined now. It's not just going before a court. You also have the legal fees. You have the court fees that you have to carry. And now taking into consideration that a legal proceeding takes more or less 1 to 1.5 years approximately, and in general, that could also be a financial burden, because the claimant, meaning the player, would always have to firstly pay their lawyers to initiate the claim for them, because usually they are at a level of the district court. And the district court requires a lawyer to be representing the parties, meaning the claimant and the defendant. So this is also something to take into account. And then in addition, this brings me back to our initial question of Bill 55. If you don't even have a prospect of enforcing your judgment, why to go to court anyways?
So I would imagine if the amount you have lost is not substantial, it's very discouraging to look at the time of the process, the costs. And just for those who have never been to court, even if you win the case in Germany, but you still don't get your money from Malta, will the legal costs, the money for your lawyers and the court, will that be out of your pocket? Or I guess so.
Yes.
You will not get it back. So you, first of all, even if you win, you have your expenses and you have no other party that would reimburse you for that.
Exactly. But I mean, the purpose of taking part in games of chance is the chance of winning and losing. It is difficult from our point of view to argue that the consumers, the players, had no knowledge of the potential losses they would acquire. So this is also a factor to take into account. You have to be able to prove before the civil courts that you are that you had no knowledge of the illegality and that you did not understand the scope and the realms of what you were participating in at the time. Not only in regard to the knowledge itself, this also plays a role in regard to statute of limitations. So meaning the claim itself could have expired. If you can't highlight that only now you became knowledgeable of the grounds for your claim, you can hardly argue saying, well, I lost this money in 2015. This is almost 10 years ago now, but still I want my money back. Does seem a bit odd to me, at least.
I very much agree, because when you look into that, if I throw the dice, I know I can win or lose. It doesn't matter if the offering is legal or illegal. So you play in order to win or lose. That's your entertainment. So I find this concept of saying, yes, you did not know that the operator was not licensed, was illegal, that you can claim something back, because still, I think when you play, you enter into that game because, as you rightfully say, you have a chance to win and a chance to lose. So as a layman, for me, in terms of, is it fair to claim the money back, keep the winnings, it's challenging for me to say it makes a difference if somebody has a license or not.
Exactly, and you are bringing forward the crucial point here. Most of these operators were holders of licenses even at that time, although obviously they weren't national licenses from a German gambling regulator. They were still licenses from other European member states, and one of the main foundations of the EU are that you have the freedom of services, and this would then again mean the acknowledgement of licenses that were obtained on Malta, for example, or in Spain. There is a fine line between thinking a player is to be protected and an operator who's just doing their business. Obviously, they do have to adhere to compliance requirements pursuant to their, for example, Maltese licenses, and usually they did. So from a viewpoint of the operator, obviously it makes it hard to understand why you offered good and well entertainment products under a license of a European member state, fulfilling all the compliance requirements, paying out winnings to the same player who's now requesting their losses back.
Yeah, for me, it's an interesting concept, because if you are, let's stick to the example, if you are sitting on Malta, you have a license as an operator, you did nothing illegal, and we are in the age of the internet. So anyone can basically play anywhere, and if needed, that person can even use a VPN to pretend he's playing from somewhere else. And so I'm a bit worried if all the legislation, including Glücksspielstaatsvertrag, the new law in Germany, keeps pace with the development of the digital age, because there's no wall that you can tear down or build up as long as it's online. Do you think the lawmakers looked into that, especially now with the German regulation? I see the discrepancy between German law, Bill 55, Maltese law. You cannot stop someone from playing somewhere. So I find it super challenging to say we have court rulings and pretend we have. No, pretending is not the right word, but we try to apply national law to an international community. Super interesting. Must be a wonderful playground for lawyers like you, isn't it?
Exactly, yes. But obviously, national governments can only govern what happens on their national territory. It would be very difficult to make a law that says, well, you can't gamble at an operator from Curaçao, for example. I mean, we do have criminal liability still in Germany that criminalizes participation in illegal gambling offers, yes, but it's very difficult to enforce. And one of the main triggers to channel players from the black market to the whitelisted market would be an efficient enforcement against the black market. Yeah. This, from what I've at least experienced, has not yet happened. And this is one of the factors you just mentioned, the digital age. It is very difficult to enforce against companies, more or less, that are not more than just a name somewhere on some island very far away. So these challenges have to be acknowledged, but are not really the making or a result of the making or actions of the regulator. They are just inheriting this problem, to be honest, and I would not want to be in their shoes to experience exactly those hurdles. But it has to go hand in hand, making the whitelisted market attractive enough for operators to wanting to participate in it, and making the black operations or the black market so unattractive due to efficient enforcement and criminal liability that it does not become attractive anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say that's some nice words to finish our conversation. I hope we have delivered it in a way that also people who are not deep in online gambling and not deep in law took something out of it. And if I may ask a final question, Michelle.
Yeah, sure, please.
Are you looking at gambling only from a legal perspective, or do you have a gambling experience also? Have you ever tried what you are talking about?
I actually have tried. Mainly it was bank holder games and poker in a land-based casino. And obviously land-based casinos here in Germany, and especially in our area, have some form of a flair. It's very luxurious, I find. And it really is a happening, an event, if you go there with your friends or colleagues, for example. But other than that, I'm also looking at gambling from a legal perspective and a professional point of view, which nonetheless makes, for me at least, even more fun and is more fun and just gives me more energy even.
Okay, so thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
A wonderful discussion about Bill 55, Malta, and gambling. And we are looking very much forward to another episode together with you. So thanks so much. It was wonderful that you found time for us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So